Recently, someone asked me what's the most important skill that a beginner should focus on when starting to learn pickleball. So in this video, we're gonna start with tips and tricks for beginners and go all the way up to the pro level. The most important skill as a beginner is the serve and return and being very consistent at it. These are the only two shots of pickleball that you hit pretty much every single rally. So it's incredibly important to make sure these are consistent and not going out. The good news is the more that you work on the serve and the return, the more that it translates to every other part of your game. So it's important to put a lot of time into these two skills. Specifically, the serve is the only shot in pickleball that you have complete control over. So when you're starting, I'd recommend just going with a really small motion and just trying to hit it like this. Oftentimes beginners get the yips whenever they're serving. So they'll go to serve a ball and they'll overthink it and they'll use like way too big of a motion, or they'll hit the ball into the net or hit the ball out, or just something will go wrong. So instead, I just want you to think about literally just hitting a ball to someone on the other side of the court that's asking for it. Because we can all do this, just like easily hit a ball over there. But when you're thinking about the serve, it gets really complicated and often will mess you up. Whenever you're not thinking about it, it's really easy to hit the ball to somebody else on the other side of the court. And usually it's for two reasons. Number one, your motion is incredibly small. And number two, your paddle face is pointing in the right direction. But when you start to think about it, things get a little wonky. There's a great piece of pickleball advice that you'll often hear, but if you're new to the game, it's gonna be really bad for you. And that's to serve your balls deep into the court. So the reason that we do this is because you have to let the ball bounce before you return it. So ideally, if you serve it all the way back here, then the person returning has less time to react and they have to hit a ball that's really deep. Whereas if you hit a ball closer to the middle of the court, they can easily run up and hit a consistent shot. But here's the problem. If you're a beginner and you're just starting pickleball, then hitting here leaves you almost no room for error, and you're gonna wanna hit the ball a lot harder to get it there, which means a bigger motion, which means you're more than likely gonna hit balls out or into the net or wide. So the tip for beginners is to aim for the dead middle of the court. So this box that we're aiming into is 15 feet long this way and 10 feet wide this way. If you aim for the dead center of the court, you'll have 7.5 feet this way and 5.5 feet this way to miss. And that's a whole lot of room to miss. But if you're aiming back here, then you really have like a couple of inches or maybe 1 foot this way to miss, which is way less likely to actually go in. And when you're starting, you want to be more consistent than powerful. The next shot you have to hit is a return. And most of the time, people are going to aim for your backhand since this is a very basic strategy. So when you're starting as a beginner, you likely don't have a good two-handed backhand. You probably don't have a good one-handed backhand, and you'd much prefer to take shots with your forehand. And so this next tip is going to tell you how to do that in the most simple way possible. When you're returning, all you have to do is just stand closer to the left side of your box, and then any shot hit to you is going to go to your forehand. Now, the one caveat with this is you might get aced if they hit this tiny little short corner up here. But the reality is when you're just starting out, this shot is such a difficult shot to hit that more than likely no one's going to hit it. And if they try for it, they'll probably hit it wide. When you're on this side, stand to the left, and then anything hit to you, you can either just take one step to your left and hit a forehand, or take maybe 1 or 2 steps this way, hit a forehand. And when you're on this side of the court, same thing. You want to return from the left box. And here, anything in front of you, you can get with your forehand. And if they happen to hit right here, then you might get aced. But once again, very, very small margin of error for them. And if you're playing at the lower level, they're likely not going to hit that shot. The last tip for beginners is to aim your returns also to the middle of the court. Now, same piece of advice you might get on your serves is to hit the ball in the very back half of the court. But once again, the problem with this is that you're new to the game and you don't have a lot of control yet. So brand new beginner, I'm talking like maybe 2.5 to 3.5. You want to be aiming right here on your returns. This gives you the most margin possible and ensures that you'll never miss a return again. So that's beginners from 2.5 to 3.5. Now let's move on to intermediates from 3.5 to 4.5. A lot of players around this level have really good drops and drives on their third shot, but they don't know when to move forward in the transition zone, or more importantly, they don't know where to go once they've hit a good drop or drive. The most simple way to know if you can move in off a drop or a drive is to look at your opponent's paddle. So if I've hit a drop from back here, and my opponent's paddle is really low to the ground, they're taking it below the net, the only place they can hit that ball is up into the air or a soft dink. So that's my cue to come all the way up to the kitchen line. If their paddle's around their hip height or the net height, then I can probably come in like halfway, maybe a little bit closer, because now they're able to hit slightly down on the ball. And finally, if their paddle's like above their head, they're hitting an overhead, or they're taking a ball from quite high, then I might want to stay all the way back and maybe even take a step back. So once you get a little more advanced, you don't have to rely on your opponent's paddles. You can actually just use this earlier indicator, which is your partner's hit. So the second I see my partner hitting a drop shot, I can tell from the trajectory of his ball if it's going to be nice and low, and if it is, then I can approach the net. And this gives me a slightly earlier cue to know if I can come in and then maybe potentially poach. But if you see him in distress and he hits a ball super high, then I don't have to look at my opponent's paddle. I can just stay back immediately. So you know when to move up off your drops, but do you know where to move to after you've hit a drop? So there's this concept in pickleball called shading, and it refers to how you and your partner move together, but it also refers to where you move in relation to the ball. So for example, if I hit a drop over to this sideline and it lands over here, then I should position myself close to the sideline and my partner will be to my left. But I need to protect my sideline because that's where the ball is. So the place that you put yourself should not be on the sideline, but instead get into a position where you can easily cover the sideline within one step. The same thing applies to my partner. If I had a drop to that side, my partner should be over here, maybe slightly across this midcourt, because now I'm over there next to the sideline. So we need to be covering this side of the court. One of the earliest misconceptions that you're going to have is that this is my court and that over here is my partner's court. And I just need you to get that out of your head. There are so many times where you need to be stepping across this middle line to support your partner. So that's the sideline, but if I were to drop the ball to the middle of the court, then now I can position myself slightly in the middle of my court. My partner will be in the middle of their court, and maybe we're also kind of pinching towards the middle, because the most likely place they're going to hit the ball is probably directly at us, or they might hit a really sharp dink angle, and in that case, if we're in the middle of the court, we can easily just take one small step and return that ball. But most importantly, it doesn't matter how you position yourself if you're not split-stepped and ready to move in either direction. So this entire time, we've been operating off the assumption that you're split-stepped and ready, and you can move in either direction depending on where they hit the ball. But oftentimes at the lower level, you'll see people running straight ahead as their opponents are hitting the ball. And when you're running, your lateral movement is severely limited, so you can't cover as much court. And if you're on the move going forward, if a ball is hit directly to you, you're not going to have the same amount of control as you would have if you're split-stepped and low to the ground. So this is how you split-step. After you hit a shot, you can move forward into the court and then take one final step and then move laterally left and right like this. One really common mistake that you'll probably do is try to split step and jump forward, but the problem is your weight distribution is going to be really off balance. You might be leaning too far forward or backwards. The more reliable approach is to stop your momentum with one final step and then split step out wide like this, and then finally start to lower your body as your opponent's hitting the ball so you can easily move in either direction depending on the shot they hit to you. But finally, the most important thing is to make sure you're split stepped before your opponent hits the ball, no matter where you are on the court. So even if you've hit a perfect drop, but you're all the way back here when they're hitting the ball, that's okay. Just stop here, get ready, and then respond to the shot that they hit. The worst thing you can do is to be running forward as you're hitting a ball. They hit one directly at you, and all of a sudden you can't control it. Now we're going from intermediate to advanced. This is like 4.5 to 5.5 plus. This is how you get extremely good at speed ups.
But first, I'm on the road to becoming a singles pickleball pro, but playing singles more often has exposed one of the weakest parts of my game, the return. So recently, I've been using the Erne pickleball machine to return serves that are as fast or sometimes even faster than the serves of the top pros. These serves have so much topspin that I have to be perfect with my technique if I want to hit a decent return. But whenever I go back to returning a more normal level of serves, I feel like I have all the time in the world. These are some of the best gains I've ever made in my pickleball career, and if you also want to improve quickly, then use my code SHEA at checkout for $100 off your Erne.
So the number one thing for speed ups is you need to make it look exactly like your dinks. That means your paddle position, your body position, everything needs to be super intentional and look as if you're just about to hit a dink. Whenever you do this, you can easily just flick a ball and they're not expecting it because you look like you're about to hit a dink. One of the most important parts of speeding up a ball is being deceptive. So here's a really easy way to be deceptive by using what we call the Kyle. There are two approaches to speed ups, either power or placement. So you can hit the ball really hard, or you can try to put it in a very particular position. Let's cover both. So when this ball is landing like maybe in front of my left foot, I want to get down like I'm about to hit a backhand dink. Really important, keep my elbow tight to my body. And then at the last second, flip my palm towards my opponent and open up towards a forehand. The really important part of this shot is to make it look like you're about to hit a backhand dink with your entire body language. So as I'm hitting this, I'm getting low and kind of moving my body, and then the last second, flipping my paddle over and hitting a flick. So first, let's talk about power speed up. So these are balls that you hit that are definitely going out, but you're trying to do one of two things. Either number one is hit your opponent. So you're probably aiming like center of mass here and just trying to hit their body. Hopefully they don't have enough time to react. The first outcome you're looking for is a ball that you speed up really quickly and actually hit your opponent with. The second option for this is hitting a ball that's going out, but it's close to their body, and more than likely they don't have enough time to react. So instinctively they put their paddle up and hit the ball. You'll hear this all the time where people do that and then they say, I didn't have time to react, it was coming right at me, things like that. That's what we're going for with these types of shots. The downside with this type of shot is that you're either going to hit a very direct winner, or you're probably just going to lose the point immediately if they're good at letting those out balls go. So hitting a ball at your opponent's body is a very viable option, especially when you're on the 5-0 range. It's kind of common there, but you got to pick your times to use it because you don't want to do this just all the time. People are going to get upset and you can definitely hurt somebody if you do this. But there's another way to speed up, and that's with control. So these are shots that are going to be landing in, but you're hitting a very specific part of your opponent's body. The first tip for controlled speed ups is look at your opponent, and if they're prone to guessing or have a tendency to move their paddle to one side or the other, then you want to aim for the other side of their body. So very often people will cover their backhand naturally, and this is good for most shots, but what it does expose is their right shoulder. So if their paddle naturally goes down and low, then you want to aim to the other side of their body, high and to the right, so they have to go all the way across to get to that ball. And usually they don't have enough time to do that because they prematurely guessed this direction. Same thing on this side. Oftentimes people will go maybe something like this, high and to the right. If they do that, you can aim low and to the left and make sure that they can't get all the way back here. And if they do get back there, more than likely they're just going to pop the ball up and not hit something that's dangerous to you. The other thing you can look at a very advanced level is your opponent's grips. So there are certain types of grips that have a lot of weak points. So the standard continental grip, their right shoulder is severely limited. So even if they naturally cover this right side, if you hit them over here, it'll be very tough for them to take. Like, look how much I'm having to bend my wrist just to get here. Me personally, I hold my paddle with more of a pancake style, and that makes shots that are high and close to my body really hard to get to because I can't adjust my paddle to hit it with the right angle. But if I take it out in front of me, then it's pretty easy to defend. Here's the most advanced tip on this video. Whenever you're hitting controlled speed ups, there's a lot of patterns you're going to see emerge. Most of the time, your opponent is not just going to let the ball go by them and have a clean winner. They're probably going to pop it back. But in these examples, they're going to hit it back in a very predictable way. So if your opponent is covering their left hip with their paddle like most people do, and you hit up here to the right, then to get to that ball, they have to actually move their paddle all the way across their body. And by doing this, they're naturally going to hit the ball back in that direction. Same thing on the other side. If I'm on the right side of my body and you hit it to my left hip, more than likely, I'm going to hit that ball to the left. So whatever side of the person's body you speed it up to, it's probably going to come back in that same direction. So if I hit it to your right shoulder, you're probably going to hit it back in that same direction, and this allows us to establish patterns. So when I speed up over here, my paddle should finish here and look for the put away in this direction. And if I speed up across your body like this, then my paddle should be over here and look for the put away in this direction. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing, and you can get more tips like this, plus chances at free paddles in my Road to Pro newsletter that you can find at the link in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.